Every horror fan has heard this. Slasher movies get no respect. Everyone's heard someone say, I hate slasher movies. Sometimes the blow is weakened a little when they add except for, and then they insert some slasher title. Usually the movie they've picked out that's okay is Halloween or the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because everyone admits they're pretty good. So why do we hate slashers? Well, not me, but horror fans generally. As I see it, one of the main reasons they're hated is because slashers are cheap. Slashers are inexpensive to make. You don't need really good actors in every role, because most of the purpose of your cast is to get killed off by the villain. It helps if you have a charismatic villain, but if you keep him silent and masked, you can avoid this. All you need for your final girl is someone who can scream and look halfway decent. Presto! The country used to be full of kids who read Fangoria, so they learned how to make halfway decent gore makeup effects. So your actors are cheap, your effects are cheap, and your sets are cheap, because you're filming in the woods or an old house somewhere. You don't need a big fancy hotel or a spaceship, so shabad that movie and get money on to the next one. So, slashers are cheap, it's true, but let's remember, a movie can be extremely expensive with a high-priced cast, and yet it may suck. And also, many really great movies are also really cheap. Of course, I admit most slasher directors are just going for a cheap buck, but a few rise above this. Overall, I'd say just because they are cheap doesn't make them bad. Another reason people don't like slashers is because they're made for a teen audience quite often. And, so like anything that teenagers like has to be bad. I mean, you can see the essential truth and yet untruth of this thing if you think about it. Now, I'm not going to tell you that slasher movies are good, because of course the vast majority are really terrible, but some of them rise above their badness and become fun to watch. So without further ado, we're going to discuss a few good slashers out there. As always, I'm going to ignore the ones you can find on your own, like, Halloween and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I'm going for the weird ones. So first, we're going to talk about a really old one, usually not thought of as a slasher, though it is. It's Bucket of Blood by Roger Corman. Everyone in it's a beatnik, which is fabulous. And the hero is a would-be artist who wants to be respected, but he sucks. So he's working hard on being respected, and he eventually finds out that if he kills something, he usually kills a cat, and then he covers it with wax, and it looks like a statue, and then he says, look, he has a dead cat. Then, of course, because everyone is all the beatniks are so shallow, they think this is great art, and so he kind of expands on it, killing more people and making the art. It's one of Sid Haig's early movies. He's not a bad guy in it. He's kind of interesting. He's shocked and horrified. He's one of the few beatniks that actually has a little bit of character. Because Sid Haig is so much, right? So anyway, Bucket of Blood, it's super entertaining. There's some comedy in it. And if you haven't seen Bucket of Blood, go see it. Also, as a special bonus, Bucket of Blood was filmed, my understanding is filmed with the extra money they had left over. They finished doing Little Shop of Horrors with Audrey 2, the killer plant, and they had a little money left over, and they had a weekend. And so they said, let's do something else. We got the cast here, let's do it. So they did Bucket of Blood with basically the same cast and the same sets and a wholly different plot. And so best use of $500 ever. Now we're going to talk about a movie that's either called Twitch of the Death Nerve, which is a great title, or Bay of Blood, which is a terrible title. Now this is a movie by Mario Bava. I talked about it in my video on Mario Bava. Which my video guy might be putting a picture of the link to here. And it is, in a sense, the first slasher movie, but it's great and it's hysterical because it starts out with the person being killed, like a lot of slashers, and then pretty quick you see the person that did the murder is killed in turn. And and basically there's not a single slasher in the movie. There's a couple that kill more than one guy, but it's like competing killers. It's really well done and entertaining, and it's Mario Bava, so it's him inventing the slasher movie, and few slashers have lived up to it. Now let's go on to some things that aren't so fundamental. So Larry Drake is an actor who was a great supporting actor, and he was a comedian, and he got to make a movie in the 90s called Dr. Giggles, and it is terrific. If you like slashers, even if you don't. I showed this to a bunch of my friends who all said they hated slashers, and they actually liked Dr. Giggles. I think the best part of it was when something would happen in Dr. Giggles where they would, how when you're watching a movie and you see something that's obviously stupid and couldn't take place, and you say, oh, that's dumb, they wouldn't do that. So Dr. Giggles has tons of these moments. So my friends would say, oh, that guy wouldn't be killed from just that stab to the gut. And the guy would be stabbed, he fell over, he wouldn't really be dead. But then 5 minutes later, the guy that they thought had been killed stupidly shows up alive. And after like 8 times of them saying, oh, that's dumb, that wouldn't be like X, and then finding out afterwards that it wasn't like X, it was like the smart way, they finally realized that Dr. Giggles was too smart for him, and then they just were able to sit back and enjoy it. So anyway, it's a Larry Drake showpiece, and there's not enough of those. And Dr. Giggles is pretty funny, and no, he's not a real doctor. In fact, the big threat of it is that he finds out that there's this girl with a heart problem, and he decides he's going to save her by doing a heart transplant. And the only medical training he's had is being drugged in a insane asylum for years, which is, not like super good medical training. It's scary and it's good. Next, let's talk about Luther the Geek. Don't be worried that it says it's Troma. It wasn't made by the Troma Industries for them. They just published the movie. So Luther is in fact a geek who talks like a chicken, and it has a really entertaining part at the start where the group of policy wonks are talking about whether they should release Luther into society or not. I said, yeah, he's been really good in here. He can live on his own now. And they like, but he's crazy. He ate a person. He says, well, I think he's paid for his crime. Anyway, so they let Luther go, and Luther is so dysfunctional, he cannot even talk. The very first thing he does is like walk into a grocery store and start eating eggs right from the carton. He's like terrible, but he has charisma, even though he clucks like a chicken. And the other thing that I really like about him is that so often they have some guy who's been in prison or been in a insane asylum for years, and he comes out and he can drive cars and everything. Well, Luther sees a motorcycle. He wants to ride the motorcycle, so he gets on it. And of course he can't ride a motorcycle. This is the first motorcycle he's ever straddled. So it immediately wrecks, he's really incompetent in other things too. So it entertained me. And I thought Luther was a hoot, and I think you would too. Now, there is a movie that is called The Ice Cream Man, and I didn't watch it for a long time because I thought it was just another slasher, but man, it's not. So it's a really good showpiece for Clint Howard, who's always great, and it's really goofy and crazy and has all kinds of bizarro things going on. People think that he's a good guy, and he has like roaches in this pistachio ice cream and no one notices. It's not always coherent. There's continuity errors. Everyone's having a lot of fun. It might possibly be the weirdest slasher movie I ever saw, so that alone may make you want to see it. And it's infectious. For number 6 on our list, we're going to bring Joe Spinell. So Joe Spinell was an actor who sadly died too young, but he looks like a really, really creepy guy. In all the movies he's in, he's a creep. There's a film he did called The Last Horror Film, also known as Fanatic. And basically, it's about horror fans, and they're fixated on a girl. In this case, the girl is Carolyn Monroe, who used to work for Hammer. She's super cute. Oh, by the way, if you're worried, in the image I show here, he doesn't actually kill her with the broken bottle. He just menaces her. But it's about a horror fan fixated on a horror movie actress, and like not trying to kill them, but just like trying to have them be what he sees them as being. So it doesn't break the fourth wall, but it kind of is meta in the way it influences that. And it's, I thought, a really well done slasher movie. He's not trying to kill her particularly, though it might end in that, because isn't that what happens to a girl in a horror movie? But he's killing other people in the way. And anyway, I really liked that. And everything he does is with the horror movie thing. Like, for example, the great slasher Fade to Black, if you've seen that, where the guy is killing people in line with horror movie tropes. And Fade to Black has the scene, I didn't include it on my list because it's well known, but a scene where he kills a girl according to the Psycho movie, and then he pours chocolate syrup down the drain because he knew that that's what Hitchcock used for blood in the black and white Psycho. Of course, that doesn't work in color, it doesn't look right, but it's like, it shows you how crazy the guy is. Anyway, next, New York Ripper. New York Ripper is by Lucio Fulci. And really, Lucio Fulci, though I like him, he only has a few really good movies, but they're really good. Most of the movies are bad. This is kind of in the middle. It's like really exploitative in a not always a good way. It's almost giallo, but not quite. One of the features that's really weird about it is that the killer talks like Donald Duck. And this is actually becomes a plot point to figure out who he is. If you like Fulci and seen some of the things, you may like this one too, but it's tough to get through. I don't watch it very often. Because it's tough to get through, but maybe that's the same as good. Now let's go to China for number 8, Ebola syndrome. Okay, so there's an actor in China named Anthony Wong. His dad was British, and so but he was raised in Hong Kong, so there was a lot of racial sentiment against him because he was only half Chinese. Because of course anyone can be racist, right? So Anthony Wong had a tough life and a dark background, and this shows in his movies, but he is such a good actor. I love Anthony Wong. So in this one, Ebola syndrome, It does have Ebola. The Anthony Wong goes to Africa, but he's a carrier of Ebola, but he doesn't get the symptoms. So he goes back and starts spreading it. But he's also killing people and making them into meat pies and stuff. It's like super, super gory, and it has Anthony Wong. So if you haven't seen Anthony Wong, this may not be the very best introduction to him, but, you know, it's strong stuff. Now, for an Italian one, Joe D'Amato is usually... Okay, so Joe D'Amato is a terrible, terrible director, but he has managed to make a few good movies. I assume by happenstance, just because he made so many, right? Usually he really sucks. You don't have to look at a lot more of his stuff. But Anthopovicus, I quite liked. It has very scary early scenes where these people come onto this island, and it's for a vacation, and there's no one on the island. There's a small town, but there's no one there. No one's around at all. And of course it's because, like, the killer, George Eastman, has killed everyone, right? But as they go through it, things start happening and getting worse and worse, and it's atmospheric. The scenes on the island are good. I quite liked it, so you can watch for Anthopovicus. He did a sequel called Absurd, which is okay, I guess, but it's only for completists. Now, for my last one, I'm going to talk about a Japanese movie, Evil Dead Trap. So Evil Dead Trap has the advantage that there's some found footage stuff in it, which is cool. There's a news team going out putting themselves in danger, which is cool. There's a really interesting killer. It is kind of rapey in parts, which I did not like at all and think it could live without. But it also is not maybe totally a slasher, because it does have supernatural or science fiction elements to it, and usually they don't have those. So there you have it. 10 slashers that I think have value beyond their despised genre. Now, I will say that the other 10,000 slashers out there aren't worth watching. Some of these, when I talked about, are too gory or too violent or too mean-spirited for a normal audience. But maybe you are abnormal and would like them. Also, you might be abnormal enough to subscribe to me, maybe get notifications if you want to hear about things, and you can buy my material that I make. Thanks!